podcast of Summernats, the world's wildest car festival. My name's Jay Benz, and I'm joined by my mate, O-Dub. Webby.
How are you, mate?
I'm very good, mate. What's been going on in your world?
Well, there's been plenty going on, and I've actually, just for our last show, I've actually got my cars finished. So I've been working flat out on my XY, and then my Camaro, I've had it all pulled apart. So got it finished last weekend. So all good. How about you? You've been working on your Commodore?
I have a little bit, yes. I've booked it in to get some stuff done in September now, so it's going to get sandblasted, and I've got a paint strip before then, but it's going on a rotisserie, so it's getting all cleaned underneath and inside and out, so it's going to be totally smick. So, and then I've got some plans for the motor. I'm staying Holden motor, but some plans there, and
awesome.
But it's going. I won't, reveal the colour, even though it's going to be factory colour. It's just going factory, but I want it really mint with all the badges and stuff back on there, and
nice.
A few little tweaks here and there to try and make it stand out, and bring on the haters a little bit.
That's
no, it'll be right. No, it'll be good.
The one thing we've probably covered off on a few of the podcasts is that what I like about cars is they're individual. So people just build their own cars the way they want, and forget the haters, mate. Don't worry about all them. You build your car what you want, how you want it.
No, I'm only joking. No, I'm really excited.
Yeah. So am I. It'd be really good.
Yeah. It's been I've had the car for about 10 years now, and it's been sitting there. It was sort of someone else's project. And it's sort of, I got it then really cheap in terms of VL money back then. So it's glad I bought it then and didn't have to buy it now, put it that way.
Well, hopefully we've given you a bit of inspiration out of all this.
Mate, absolutely. Otherwise it'd still be in there rusting away.
Yeah, fantastic.
All right. This episode, we've got Summernats founder Chic Henry on for a mad chat about life and, of course, Summernats. What do you reckon about that, Webby? That should be great, mate.
Yeah, fantastic. And I believe I'm actually going to be probably in that as well. Is that correct?
You will be in that, mate. We will be interviewing also Owen Webb. He'll be in there as well. You might even find dig up a few photos of you in the acid wash jeans and the jackets and stuff, mate.
And the mullet. Don't forget the mullet.
Yeah, the whole idea behind this episode was to get Owen, yourself together, and Chic, two guys that have been so influential in the scene and there from the start, to have a chat about, equally both of you guys about, Summernats and life and cars and where it all started and how you got your passion for what you do and how it's developed into what it is today.
No, that's fantastic. Yeah, no, I'm actually looking forward to it because I like giving back because the Summernats and the whole street machine car life has been so good to me. I love giving back, so we can help influence or help people along the way. I love it. So all good. Yeah,
awesome. Get commenting in the comments because we're giving away a massive Canna merch pack that will also come with some Canna products. So, that's something interesting you guys can win this week. The way you're going to do that is just get in the comments and, I don't know, tell us how much you want a Canna merch pack and some products.
Exactly.
All right, let's cut to a skip break and we'll be back with Chic.
2020 is the year the world went crazy. Fires, pandemic, riots, and Mick Brasher put a 13B2 rotor in illegal. Now we have the solution. Burnouts. Burnout Masters has the cure for your COVID-19 blues. 2 days of burnout action on the 12th and 13th of September at Sydney Dragway. 100 cars per day. $16,000 in prize money. And 4 Burnout Masters tickets to Summernats 2021. Spectator tickets are extremely limited. Get yours now at burnoutmasters.com.au.
Skid ad. This skid ad is brought to you by Maguire's. Mad.
Whatever you like. Here we go.
Right, welcome back from a skid break. We are joined by two people who have been super important to the street machine scene in this country. Welcome, Owen Webb and Chic Henry. Chic, tell me.
Yeah, good to be here.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Hey, Jay Benz, I'm on the other end of this. How come that? What's happened here?
Mate, you've been thrown in the chair. You've been thrown out of the. You've joined us for a bit of a interview in a different style today.
Yeah, all good.
Chick, tell me, where did your passion for cars come from?
My dad was really interested in cars and motorbikes, and even though when I was young I spent more time thinking about going to the pool or swimming down the river and that sort of stuff, there was stuff that I guess was built into me from a young age. And years later, I mean, you know, even in the most recent years, I've thought a lot about where it came from, and I can remember cool cars that got around at home. And even though I was thinking about all sorts of other stuff, like where I was going to go on my pushy and whether I was going to get into trouble for bad results at school and girls and all that sort of stuff, all that important shit, I had this car effect going on all the time. I mean, here's an example. There was a fellow named Wayne Mankin, who was really well known in, and may still be in Melbourne and I think his knowledge of turbochargers years ago. And he lived just up the road from where Mum and Dad lived. And each afternoon, he'd roar up the road in this bloody FJ that he had, and Mum and Dad would go off all the time. He'd hit third gear just out the front of our place, and they'd be going off, and I'm thinking, no worries. That's all right by me. And so, but Dad was always mucking around on cars, and I was never very far away. And so I suppose, in a way, it sort of became part of my DNA as life moved on. And I remember some of the cool cars getting around. There was a Studebaker Hawk, an emerald green and gold one. And I thought, man, that's the coolest looking car. And Dad took me one day to see, have a look at an Aston Martin DB2 that had the engine pulled out of it. And I'm saying to him, you got to buy it, Dad. You know, I mean, Dad was good at working on our bloody Hillman Minx. So how are we going to go with an Aston Martin? But you know, and years later, I thought back, well, even though I had a whole bunch of other serious interests, cars were never very far from my mind.
Isn't that interesting, Jay Benz? Nearly every single person we've interviewed, we like to always ask that question, and nearly everybody was it's come from their father or their parents, but mainly their father, isn't it? And yeah, and I'm no different. I was just thinking when you're asking that to Chick, so even they didn't ask, I'm going to tell you anyway. But really similar. I grew up on a dairy farm, and I was driving tractors and stuff from the age of probably 4 or 5. And I remember having my first paddock basher which was an FC Holden Ute, probably about 7 or 8, and used to flog that around. So I had an interesting story. Dad had a fuel tank there, and he used to say, I don't know what's happened to the fuel. It was full last week, and it's down. And I'm thinking to myself, he'll never know. What was he thinking? The car runs itself, doesn't run on petrol. So it's pretty naive when you're a kid, hey. But another interesting thing, because as you may know, or a lot of people may, I really got into spray painting, pedal beating and spray painting. And I remember we painted a car when I was, again, probably 12, painted it with a paintbrush. We warmed the paint up. It was an FB Holden, and we painted it with a paintbrush. And then I still also remember my mum and dad had a FE Holden, and they took that brand new, and they took it to a panel shop to get a black roof on it in Dapto of all places. And I remember going to that panel shop and watching them paint that roof. So yeah, it sort of goes right way back into that.
You know, part that I've always had liked high performance cars. The crankier the better.
Yeah.
And street cars, and Owen and people that know me well and know that that's what I gravitate to most of the time. But even when I used to go to the motor racing with Dad, I wasn't all that interested in who won what and all that sort of stuff. I was more interested in the bloody sound of that Tornado made, and the wheels that were on Bob Jane's E-type Jag.
Yeah.
And it was other things that affected me. I used to love the smell of the motorbikes, that special mixture fuel that they used.
Yeah.
So, you know, I was never going to be a sort of a circuit racing type person. I suppose that's why when I got interested in drag racing later years, that came out there too, because of the tough street aspect of it all. But you know, I can look back on the parts of cars that really got me, and it was the sound and the look and the vibration and the anger and all that sort of stuff. Didn't matter whether that bloody car was winning the race or not, as long as it looked and sounded good.
Yeah, yeah. That's interesting. And I reckon I was probably attracted more to, as I said, the paintwork side. That's why I went on to be a panel beater and painter. So I was attracted to more the appearance side. Obviously, love high performance cars and that, but yeah, definitely the appearance side.
Was that car you painted when you were young, Webby, about 12? Did you rub it back or was straight off the paintbrush, not off the gun?
No. Use the brush.
Yeah, but
So,
did you block it back and give it a polish? Or?
Yeah. Oh, no. We sanded it first, then painted with the brush. But you warm the paint up first, and then it goes on smooth, and you don't have to buff it. You can't really buff enamel anyway. So
I had an old van that I used to drive around in when I used to surf, and I was in the army then, and I pinched some B Company blue and painted it with this dark blue, with a 2 and 6 penny brush that I got from the bloody hardware store in Mornington. And the day I painted it rained, so I've got all these little speckly marks all over it.
Custom paint. It was custom paint back in the day
to get rid of the roughness.
Things we used to do, it really was pretty wild when you look back on that. But they are the things that shape you for what you are. So I think it was a great time to grow up actually and have that.
I do too. I mean, look, the other thing, it's nothing to do with, well, it is a bit to do with cars, but the other thing about living in that period of time, everything was sort of growing. Yes. You know, even the motorsport side of things were growing, the drag race.
Yeah, Norm Beachy, Bob Jane, all those people, yeah.
And people were building some cool cars on the streets. You know, who would have thought that you could get much horsepower out of an old grey motor, you know, for a Holden? But, you know, a mate of mine, he was forever wrecking heads. He'd port them to the nth degree until he went through into the water jacket. And then he'd go and get another one for about $5 from the wreckers. Yeah. But, you know, the other aspect that I grew up with was the music side of things, you know, the early days of the Beatles. And that was a cool time, you know, because, you know, I was interested in girls. I went into the army in 1964 to do an apprenticeship. But it was a very cool time when you think about music and everything that was going on. It was, you know, it's really neat to think I grew up in that period. It was great.
Yeah, I try not to live in the past, but when you look back and you see those great things, it was a really good time. And like you said there, Chic, it was a real time of change, and just a lot of stuff was developed and went on from there. I remember the first few car shows I did, they were pretty small, but car shows were just coming into fashion as such. And the first decent car show I went to, I met that man there, Chic Henry. Was in Queensland. We did a show at a place called Australia Fair, and then we had a dinner that night at SeaWorld. And I remember, I didn't know Chic at the time, but I knew of him, of course. And then we're standing in line. He was standing in front of me, and I was standing there. We just struck a bit of a chat, and then he did say to me, he said, one day soon, I'm going to start this event, and it's going to have all the tribes, the hot rodders, the street machines, whoever wants to come. It's just going to be a big horsepower party. And within 2 years, guess what happened? An event called the Summernats.
I think I thought of what I was doing.
I bet you don't remember that, do you, that night? Do you remember that?
No, I mean, I guess since we've talked about it, I've got that vision of us standing in line there at SeaWorld. Yeah. And it's just that moment, you know, that I can remember talking to you about it. And it's true. I mean, what's the fantastic thing about it, mate, is that here we are, you and I, still associated with each other and still as passionate as we ever were. Absolutely. About what it all meant. And you know, and I suppose, you know, I don't want to make it sound like we're bloody king of the hill, but it was the broadness of our vision and what it all could mean is really what moved it along, because you and I had a lot of very in-depth conversations about how it could all happen, and we still do. We still do.
Yeah, absolutely.
We still lean on each other's opinion, and I suppose the area I lived in more to do was more the street side of things, whereas you lived on that show side of things.
Correct.
And so we were complementary to each other. I mean, when I got out of the army in 1973 and I moved to Brisbane, and I'd had a lot to do with the drag races and stuff in Townsville. And once again, there was some seriously tough street cars up there. And I had a VE Valiant that I'd spent $1 gazillion on it, that used to run fairly respectable times at the drags. And so by the time I got to Brisbane, I really was fairly active in my mind. And then I started hanging out with some of the hot rodders and drag racers who I knew. And then the street machine scene started to get a little bit of shape about it. And then we formed clubs, and of course it went on from there. But my interest, you know, I've never been a great, had a huge interest in hot rods, like in the traditional style of hot rods.
Yeah, correct.
I guess because it's that performance element in me.
Yeah.
That makes me, you know, if I was ever going to build a hot rod, it would have been more like what Fred Cavazzini had.
Yeah.
Go when he had the blown engine in there.
Yep.
And you know, I'd be, you know, if I was going to build something, I'd build probably a 40 Willys with a bloody Sonny Leonard 1,000 horsepower, 1,000 cubic inch engine in it.
Yeah.
And it'd be such a killer car you couldn't take it anywhere. But that wouldn't matter. as long as it's handled right and I could drive it around the block once in a while.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But I guess that, and I love the drag racing side of things because the look of the cars and the sound of the cars, and even though, you know, you couldn't help be affected by Top Fuel dragsters and stuff. And I mean, I worked at the drags for about 7 years in Surfers Paradise Raceway. And it's also where I met Victor Bray for the first time. You know, when he turned up there in his 57 with fuel lines, with the real cheap fuel line on it, with the woven ones, but without the red stripe on it, which was fuel resistant. And he had, you know, the 16th welding wire tied around it. And Ronnie Whelan, the chief scrutineer, he's saying, "He's your bloody mate. Tell him to rack off. Tell him to go away and get some clamps." You know, which he did. He went away, and then they're on my case about the fact that it was flat black. You know, and he's saying, "Yeah, but that's my colour. You know, that's the colour I've chosen." Jesus, it was hard. It was hard work for him, but to his credit, he never backed off from it, because then when they realised how well he went, as you know, from a drag racing point of view, they couldn't say no.
No,
because he turned up and went hard all the time. And see, there's me again, attracted to that sort of car.
Yeah.
You know, not Chevys, which I've always loved, but you know, the fact that he drove this mad thing on the street, and you know, and the mates that were in our club, my ex-wife Doreen, who, they'd come to the club meetings and she'd say, "Tell them to shut up." Shut up, mates up the back, and I'd go up the back and have a stop.
You joined them.
And she'd be into me when we got home. Yeah. Anyway, but we went to Foster one time to a car show down there, and there was a fellow with Keith Hutton had a EH with a 350 in it, real tough car. And then a mate of Victor's, Parker, I forget his first name. Anyway, he had a Nova. And of course, on the way down to the Foster and that, I think they used 2 bottles of nitrous. Hardly anyone was using nitrous. They passed everything in sight. Anyway, on the way home, I had a 57 those days with a pretty healthy engine in it. And we're like a freight train. There's the 4 cars almost joined at the bumper bar. And how the hell we got away with it on the road. It was just madness, you know, the way we drove home. And there was one part where I was passing a car close to a corner. And when I looked in the mirror, they were right behind me. I don't know how we got round the corner. And I don't know what happened to the guy we were passing, but it was mad on the streets those days. It was good fun. But, you know, it really does. It's the part that I love the most.
Yeah.
You know, not just the street racing, but the street element of it all.
Yeah, yeah. And is that why with Summernats that you had such a big, like a big element of the street, the cruising, and that there was such a big part originally? I mean, it wasn't until later in the probably 10 or 11 that we actually started the whole top 60 show and all that. So
yeah, it's true. I mean, the basic format of the Summernats, in a way, wasn't my idea. I don't lay claim to that because the Hot Rodders ran an event a bit like that. They had driving events,
yeah,
a show and shine and a cruise, and that.
I went a couple of times, yeah,
and then the early Street Machine Nationals, of course, same format, and even today the Summernats really hasn't totally got away from that primary template that we had those days. But my attitude was, and it goes right to the very top, which is going to be the top car of the event, because everyone goes to an event, and even though they might not be into show cars as such, they want to know which was the top car, which is the car that won. Correct. You know, that's everybody says that sort of stuff. So we're always going to have a top car of the event, but to be that top car, it had to have the basic elements of what it was to drive your car on the road, you know. So in other words, had to do well in the judging side of things. That's fair enough. Had to go in the driving events, and we were never going to put those cars in the burnout anyway, because the burnout was a sort of an off the edge event in its own right. And a lot of the cars with the good show type cars were never ever going to put their car, thrash it in a burnout competition.
No.
So to have the top street machine of the event, that was something I always believed in. And really it sort of underpinned the event in every way, especially from an enthusiast's point of view. And so what grew was our attitude to the street side of things. That's why on the arena they were like that in our top 60 show. And then when we called it the elite show, because they were the elite, highly, extremely well built cars. Yeah. And then when we developed the tough street, you know, down the back of the grandstand there, where we developed that, they were the sort of angry cars. And then as the horsepower heroes developed, and all of those sort of things, we had the airbrush. You know, when we were starting to focus on the airbrush side of things because of the graphics on the cars. Yeah. And in other words, we really did try and embrace. I mean, this all came through conversation that you and I had, but it was the way we wanted to embrace everything that people wanted to do with their vehicles. And when you group them, and let me say this, when people used to say to me, tell me about the Summernats, explain it to me. The day that I started to describe it almost as a tribal event. So in other words, the burnout mob, that was a tribe. Yeah. The grass events, that was a tribe. The show and shine on the arena, that was a tribe. That was the street. There was another tribe, the mob that drove round and round and round and round and round. They'd drive 24 hours a bloody day round and round the grounds, if you let them. But that was a sort of tribal aspect. Yeah. And once I would describe it to people in a tribal sort of sense, they'd catch on. You know, whereas before it was all like one big lump, and it was a little bit hard to break it all up. But the tribal thing made it so much easier for me to describe it. And then it became many shows within a show, really. Yeah. And that's still true today, because interesting, Jay Benz, if you look at all the burnout guys that we've had on here over the past few months, and they know everything about the whole burnout thing and up there, they wouldn't have even known half of them, because we've asked them, half of them wouldn't have even known what was going on in the they could drop off
hall.
No, they wouldn't know.
Yeah. So it's very, very tribal. Yeah. That's
it seems they all have their own sort of like little community and culture thing going on too, you know, and I think within those two, they all have their own set of, you know, their own style of camaraderie and the way they get along. And, you know, a lot of the burnout guys seem to get along, but maybe in the show side of things, maybe I don't know, is it more competitive in a different way? And
It is, but they actually get on. I think these days probably better than ever. It was fairly fierce competition back in the day, but people now, I guess, are more accepting of each other and appreciate some of the really cool builds. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's true. I mean, the whole thing has developed to the extent where it's such an extreme sport in its own right. You know, I mean, it's more than a sport because it's a way of life, as we know. But it's so extreme in such areas. I mean, an example of, and I've used this as an example a few times, a guy that worked for me a fair while back, Ditch Jones. And he, before he worked for me, he had, I forget what he had, an HX station wagon or something like that.
He did. It was a wagon. Yep.
Yeah. Now, he drove that to work every day. Now, that car was so good and it used to go in the street category. It was so good that it should have really been in the elite. Now, this guy used to, if he got a stone chip on it, he would rub it out with those little tiny rubbing blocks, and he'd rub it out and it was gone. And the car was so perfect. And there were people that used to bitch about him, you know, because the car was so perfect that they couldn't compete against him, because even the underside was as good as the top. You know, and in our judging of this to define a street car compared to an elite car, for example, we used to say that we judge it from the sills up.
Correct.
However, the underside still had to be pretty good quality.
Correct.
But sometimes people would take that pretty good quality a lot further. But the thing that still defined the street was signs of wear and tear.
Correct.
We would be looking for stone chips and marks and things like that.
Steering wheel wear and stuff like that.
Yeah, and the driver's seat may be a little bit shinier than the passenger seat.
Correct.
But such was the focus of people on the various aspects that was the extent that we had to go to. Now, it's really important at this stage to say we also had to have a judging team that knew exactly what they were looking at. And that was when we used to have our meetings and so forth just before the event. You know, sometimes, well, many times, as Owen would know, I'd get in there and remind them of certain things. It was easy for Owen. We'd be talking about it on and off all throughout the year, and forever thinking of the development of the whole thing. But whereas the judges would basically go home and not have to think about it the way that we did. But because Owen may as well have worked for the Summernats. You may, wouldn't you? You may as well have.
I did.
Time we spent talking about it. Weighing up and, you know, and doing the post-event analysis of it all, and all the bitching and moaning and carrying on that occurred from time to time, and how we sorted it out. And, you know, and there's plenty of people they were so focused. You know, you can't believe how many people. It's interesting, but it's sort of a bit sad in some respects that people would put so much money and time into their car, and sometimes I'm sure that we let them into the top 60 show because we just wanted to give them a chance to be in there, but the car didn't quite deserve it.
I told you not to tell anybody that.
But the owner did, because of the depth of enthusiasm.
Yeah, absolutely.
That people would have. And I mean, one or two cars out of 60, that wasn't going to matter. But
I guess their passion would count for a lot.
It does. And that was a really big point of it. That it took me a long time to realise, or a while to realise that, Jay Vince, that event, it's about the cars, but it's also very much about the people. Really is about the people. Yeah.
And you know, that's one of the things that, you know, when I think about my life, the part of my life that has been involved in this whole thing, you know, what Summernats was able to do for a lot of people was to give them a place to show the thing that was their pride and joy.
Yep.
You know, and from time to time, if it was, that would excuse me, put a car like that into the top 60 show, because we just couldn't, you know, the person was so enthusiastic and it was the love of their life, and it wasn't a bad thing anyway.
No.
but it was giving them a chance to feel fantastic.
Yeah.
And that was a great thing that we were able to do overall.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
The passion's got to count for a lot. It's got to count for something. And I guess in a way too, did you see it in a way that it encourages them to then the next year you want them to come back and they probably strive for that bit better, or something else.
100%, Jay Benz. A lot of quite a few people back earlier in the piece, probably more so than today. They would genuinely come up to you and ask you, "How can I improve my car?" And I'd always start with saying, "I'm going to tell you some things here you probably don't want to hear, but I've never had." I'm talking back in the day. Nobody ever complained, and nearly all of them came back, and their car was well and truly improved. So
I was driving back through Goulburn.
I love that.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah,
no, I really enjoyed that part, helping those people out.
Absolutely. I was coming back from Sydney one night, and I was passing through Goulburn just to stop and have a feed before the freeway sort of went through. Anyway, as usual in the street, there was a few of the locals hanging out there. Anyway, there was this young guy with a really nice FB sedan. And it was just a real genuine thing. And he somehow figured out who I was. And anyway, I'm having a rave to him and stuff. And he said, "Oh, it wouldn't be good enough to enter." And I said, "This is such a good car in its genuine, unrestored state. You'll be surprised how many people will get a kick out of it."
Yeah.
Anyway, and our scrutineering on one hand didn't allow for such a car, but we made those sort of concessions.
Yeah.
For cars, and the scrutineers, they knew when that car was a good thing, and it was so cool, and it still is, to see an older car that basically is untouched.
Yeah.
People still love seeing it. Anyway, he entered, and anyway, I can't believe that coming back through Goulburn one other time, maybe 6 or 8 months later, there he is. I'm stopped at the same, going to go to the same bloody restaurant to get a feed. And there he is. And he said, "You were right." He said, people kept coming up to me. Anyway, I reckon it was probably 3 or 4 years after that, I ran into him somewhere. He came up to me and told me how fantastic it was that he got that opportunity. And I can't remember whether he said he did anything further to it. But the best part was to give him a chance.
Yeah.
An opportunity. And you were right. You said before, that you give them a start and they'll come back. And it's true. Thousands have done it like that. We gave a bit of a start. I used to say to them, it's a bit like no one ever said to you when you were going out to the school formal, you had to have the big time Pierre Cardin suit on. But as long as it looked good and you polished your shoes, your shoes. And that's what happens when you come through scrutineering.
Yeah.
Right? Blacken the tyres, clean up under the guards.
Yeah.
Make sure it's spotless, and those that did, because the scrutineers would see that they've made an effort, and what happened to them after that. But I'll bet you, if you could track any of them down, they were enthusiastic as hell after that. And then from that moment on, spent $1 gazillion on the car, threw it in that bottomless bloody pit.
I have had plenty of comments in the recently, because I still travel around seeing a lot of shops and a lot of guys, and I've got a lot of people, and I'll see it on Facebook a bit, blame me for all the money they spent on cars. I go, yeah, thanks very much. It's not my fault.
Yeah, I've got it a bit too. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Anyway, but what the hell? It's a great thing that we participated in, isn't it?
It sure is.
It's a very, very cool thing,
and still a great event. You still go down there, you see some fantastic people. The event, it's still got a lot of your DNA, but the guys have had a whole lot of new elements, and it's still a lot of fun and still a lifestyle for a lot of people.
Yeah. And people have, come up to me and introduced their kids.
Yeah.
That have come now, so-and-so's driving the car around. And, one that comes to mind is, Greg Young with the white...
White 67.
Yeah. That's won the Burnout Masters with a carburetted car, by the way.
Yeah.
And, his son drives it in, and same bloody car. And I remember seeing that at about the second Street Machine Nationals.
Yes, that's right.
Same car, you know. And when you see that, but okay, I'm more talking about his son. And so, and you know what? I've even had people come up to me and say they named their son after me. That didn't mean they call him Chic. They call him.
I was just going to say.
Thought I'd get that qualify that bit. Yeah, but that's an honour, isn't it? It's a real honour that people
and the passion shown for the scene, I guess, and the way they respect you for bringing that community together. You know, I guess that you speak to anybody that's been to any Summernats, old or young, they're starting out now or whatever. They all want to come back and they all respect the event. In that terms of just that, it can't be replicated.
Chic, it's over those years. I've never I sort of asked you this, but is there any cars that have really stood out to you that you've really liked? I know you and I have talked about it when you've done your choice nap, but have you got 2 or 3 cars that have really stood out over all those cars?
Yeah, mate. Because my taste is so broad.
Yeah.
And I guess in a way I couldn't have delivered the Summernats in a way that I didn't have that broad feeling of all
Correct.
sorts of cars.
Correct. It would have been too narrow if you just went without that broad spectrum. It'd be just a really narrow. Yeah.
But sometimes the cars that stood out to me were something maybe because of what they've done, or a bit like when I've chosen the Chic's Choice car.
Correct.
I mean, I was making sure it varied from year to year, but and if you don't mind, I'll so that I can remember it, I'll quickly go through them, and you'll get. I've written some down if that's okay.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, in the early days, the pro street side of things.
Yeah.
Robbie Beecham's Commodore, and then when Greg Carlson built a silver Commodore, but then Greg came back with HJ Ute, and that was with a blown engine in it, and that was one of the really early things. Then Gary Myers Mustang. What I thought was terrific about that really got me year after year was that it was only little Windsor in it.
Yeah.
And it spun like crazy, which was testament to what a good engine builder he was, let alone what he became as far as a burnout champion is concerned.
Yeah.
Now, whichever way we go, we can never go past Fitzy with his FC.
Correct.
We built it several times, and the number of grand champion awards that he's won more than anybody else. But why was Fitzy so good? He could drive the damn thing.
Correct.
He could drive it. It wasn't that he built a terrific car, but the bastard could drive.
Exactly.
And if you were going to kick him off his perch, you better learn to drive that terrific car you built.
Yeah.
Anyway, then I think in the early days, Mark Scaravuzzi with the green.
Of course.
Like in the big noise that he made, that he was going to blow everyone away in the burnout.
And then punch the fence.
Well, what he underestimated, and of course he's gone on to build drag chassis and stuff for people, that drag racing was a big influence to him. And what a lot of people didn't realise is on that burnout track how much rubber there was on the track. Right? And he couldn't get it to, kept on hooking up. Like he couldn't get the tyres to spin.
Couldn't get it spinning,
Built it like a drag racing car.
Correct.
And of course, with all the noise he'd made, going to be, well, when he ran into the fence, everyone's going, big bloke. I almost felt sorry for him.
Yeah, almost.
But then when we saw the graphics come in, and your XY, and then Howard's, what was Howard's XA, wasn't it?
Yeah, XA.
And the way the graphics developed in that whole thing. And then I think it was an LJ Tirana that came from Tassie.
From Tassie, yep.
Extreme graphic.
Yeah.
And,
whole car.
And, not many entrants came from Tassie. It was an effort to get the car on the boat and everything. And for that car to be such an extreme car in its own right. And so, that was fantastic. Then Taverna, one of our judges, a drag racing Camaro that he had, he painted the bloody thing pink. Right? Now, what a statement, And and that's so that had to stand out at a certain time.
Correct.
And when I first heard about, I think his name Howard Bell, that
Yes.
LX Piranha,
Yeah.
right, with that engine in it, that he had I thought it might have been a Keith Black. Anyway, whatever it was a big inch engine, 479 cubic inch with the Kinsler and Motex injection on it.
Yeah.
Now that car was an example of, you'd look at the engine bay and go, wow, isn't this cool? But the engineering in that car was all the way through it. I think he was an aircraft engineer or something like that. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But that was a cool car. Now, then in the whole of the event was when Victor and Cuzzo were there with their wild bunch of cars, driving up along Lunatic Lane, side by side, going rap, 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 along the street. And I think, oh, God help us. I'm never going to make it through the day. At times like that. How the hell are we going to survive? Then on the judging side of things, of course, Troy Hillier, when he came with the XP, the coupe, that was a very cool car in its own right. And even then, when he sold it to the new owner, when it came back the green, it looked every bit as good as it did before.
Yeah,
that was a real.
What's a real groundbreaking car? That was just one of the first.
Yeah, that was the word. Yeah. So that was a.
I love that car. I remember.
Yeah, it was, and I was only thinking about today. The boot lid tilted to the side.
Yeah, exactly.
Stuff like that, and all that.
Full metal interior, and all the roof was metal, and
Was it gold before it was green?
It was. It was gold.
Yeah, I had a poster on that on my wall when I was a kid.
Yeah,
that was a cool car.
Yeah,
and then, but going back a few years, cars that were sort of benchmarked at the sort of cars that you and I own and knew about, like Billy Westwood's Falcon.
Yeah.
And like that there was no car that we knew in the scene that was straighter than that car. I mean, it's almost a contradiction to say such a curved car.
Yeah.
The panels is straight, but that was close to perfect. That car.
It was.
It was like the benchmark that you measured everything else on. And how bloody sad it was that the thing got stolen.
Yeah.
And the circumstances under which it got stolen was just to this day, I'm still staggered that someone got away with it.
Absolutely.
And of course, around that same time when Ronnie Barclay's ute turned up, and a lot of people wouldn't realise that what was one of the things that was special about Ronnie Barclay's that coral coloured. It was HQ, wasn't it?
Yeah, HQ.
HQ.
Yep.
Yeah, it was. When we moved from highly engineered cars, which were almost pro street drag racing cars underneath, to a car where everything had been taken off and made perfect and then put back on.
Yeah.
All the brake lines and fuel lines and everything was perfect.
Re-engineered, we call that.
And that's when we started calling it re-engineering.
Correct.
Because what else would you call it? For years we sort of called it detail.
Yeah.
There was so much of that car, and that took us into a new era. And another car about that time, which I only just thought about, was our mate. What's his first name? Hillman.
Chris Hillman.
Chris Hillman.
Yeah.
When he came in that Nissan Pintara.
Yeah.
And that wagon, and it was a wagon basically sitting on top of a Commodore. HSV Commodore running chassis. Well, it's not chassis, but all the bits on there. And you say, a Nissan Pintara, why is that so good? Well, it made us look at ourselves, didn't it?
Correct.
And decide that, when something comes in there with the big high-tech brakes and all of that sort of stuff, that's the era.
Yeah.
And that was what we had to do with the judging. We always had to sort of look forward as much as we're able to. And when a car like Chris's car came in, we had to say, oh, wow, okay, this could be something coming. And so to say to the judges, if you're going to see this sort of thing again, we've got to be aware of it, And so we're forever modifying our judging system in as we look forward so that we could basically grasp what was going on. Now, whilst we're only talking about judging in that regard, there was so much about what people were doing with their cars right across the board. That this sort of thinking allowed us to think about those cars. I mean, the horsepower heroes side of things, we had to embrace what people were doing to those sorts of cars.
Yeah.
And that was high performance of a different sort.
Look at Rob Vickery. Remember the first time he started reaching those big numbers, and people like that. Every part, and I was thinking that earlier when you're talking about the event, every part was just progressing and just growing, wasn't it? Every part of that event.
Yeah. And that, I mean, there for a while when they were running horsepower hero competitions in other places in Australia to sort of qualify.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And that was an enormous part of it. And people, just like people would sit there at the burnout track and just hour after hour after hour seeing burnout after burnout, but that was their focus. It used to fascinate me. We'd be doing the video and the DVD afterwards when we were cutting it all down, and the burnout would finish, and the smoke would drift across through the crowd. Right, it was like a ghost.
Yeah,
it'd drift across through the crowd, and there'd only be the smallest number of people going. All the rest of them
sucking it in.
It was funny. They'd sit there, and so the horsepower heroes was exactly the same.
Yeah.
They'd sit in those grandstands hour after hour after hour because it became like a sort of cult.
Yeah. Some of the biggest talking points of some Summernats, I guess, would be, the horsepower hero stuff, like with Todd Wilkes and Jason Gray, and making that 500 horsepower. There was no social media back then, but I remember it going around everywhere. It's like 500 horsepower. That's insane.
I remember Rob Vickery first broke. I forget what it was exactly what he did, but that was talking about that for a year, and everybody's wondering what he's going to do when he come back. Yeah.
And what was also cool on his car was the engineering things that were being made, especially for it, because I seem to recall Rob having some things on that car that he specially made.
He did.
Yeah. Which probably wouldn't be, I don't know, I'm not hardly an expert on that stuff, hardly useful on the street, but it was exactly what they wanted. And Jake now, Jake Edwards, what he's been doing with the car, to make, 1600, 1700 horsepower.
Yeah.
Just crazy stuff. Yeah. And I remember when I was having to, when we were developing all of that, the thought that had to go into making the dynos.
Yeah. Correct.
Cope with it. I remember the Dyno Dynamics, who we had as a sponsor for a long time. It was fascinating to go to their workshop down in Lilydale in Melbourne, and to just get involved in the R&D side of things and listen to. I mean, that was just so cool that a company like that was. It was not only were they developing their own opportunity into the business world, but the Horsepower Heroes was like a vehicle. Them to be able to do that stuff. It was fantastic. And quietly, I was really proud of that sort of stuff. That we were doing that, and here's a business that was building stuff specially for the Summernats. Fantastic.
Yeah. Well, even though you didn't ask me, I'm going to tell you a couple of my favourite cars. And,
sorry, mate. I forgot all. Don't worry about me. Excuse me.
I always remember one of my first cars was Wayne Pagel's Gas 69 Black Monaro. That's still today one of my favourite cars. And every time I see him, I remind him that he's like me, yesterday's hero. And then, but a bit later, I mean, there are plenty of cars. I saw so many cars, but I got to like cars that were benchmark or the new benchmark, and Mick Fabar's Zero was definitely one of my favourite cars, for the reason being that whole car was built to a zero footprint. And to think that anybody could build a street machine of that quality to win Grand Champion and build it to a zero footprint, that's never been done anywhere in the world. That is such a, and I don't think that car ever got, or the whole build therein got the recognition it actually deserved. because that's never been done anywhere in the world. So that
Mm.
was to build a car that good to such an elite standard. Yeah, so they're probably two to my. There's plenty of others, but two of my favourite. Even up to last year, do you remember the black LJ that Paul Sant unveiled? We unveiled there.
Yeah.
Oh man, with a Sonny Leonard. What a killer car that was.
Yeah, absolutely. And to fit it in that sort of car, not a lot of room in the engine bay, you know.
No.
Mm.
And I really appreciate people like Paul Sant and Gary Myers and all the people that have kept coming back and bringing new cars and different cars and unveiling. We have had so many good cars, but good people, and just so much good has come from that event.
Yeah.
Would Gary be one of the biggest crossover sort of people who've gone like big in the burnouts
100%.
and then also in big in the show stuff? Well, it doesn't seem to be a lot of crossover like that. Gary
No, he is very unique. He's the only person that I know that has won top judge and then also won Burnout Masters. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. No, you're right too. Because I mean, that Silver Bullet was a very cool car.
Unbelievable car.
You know, and I thought, like, because I was fortunate enough to go to his workshop down in Narrandera when it was, I guess, probably 3/4 of the way done.
Yeah.
But still bare enough for me to see some of the stuff he's done.
Yeah.
But I've got to give a bit of a future nod to thinking forward, and it might be a while, unfortunately, with COVID-19 going on. The car that Fitzy has built, you know, that he took to SEMA.
Oh yeah, the 35 Chevy.
That's a car that, and like many cars, you see something on face value, and you say, "Oh yeah, that's pretty cool," you know, with the colour and the wheels and it's got this and that in it. But if people could get the opportunity to have a close look, as I have, underneath it and all,
100%.
We don't get the opportunity that often to stand with somebody and go through the great detail that people have gone to make create unique aspects of their car. I mean, that's a good thing about what you and I have done to each other. You know, and you've countless times used to come over to my office on Friday evening and say, well, when you come over tonight, go and have a look at such and such a car.
Yeah.
And you did it all the time. Yeah. And even though there was a shed full of fabulous cars, I'd go and find that one year, and one that stands out that year when it was a 55, was it 56? No, 55 and 56 Chevy.
Laurie Grimer's Chevy.
Yeah, and I've gone over there, I'm thinking, because I've come from one end, and I'm saying, where's this bloody 56 he's talking about?
55, you idiot.
But that's just an example of the things that people do to create something unique.
Well,
you
talk about unique, Chic. The other car that never really got the accolades it deserved in Australia was Rod Hatfield's 55. That car, that was like 10 years in the build.
Yeah.
Everything was engineered, the Merlin engine, like that car was just, to think that car was built in Australia, again, nothing built like that anywhere in the world.
No, that was something else. And it was a privilege to be able to hear it run when you started it up. Oh man, that was a mad car. And I mean, for what people that don't know exactly what we're talking about, it had a Rolls-Royce Merlin engine in it.
Yeah, which they used in the Mustang fighter planes.
Yeah, and it was painted up to look like
a Mustang
plane with all the pop rivets and screws and everything.
Yeah.
It was an amazing car.
Yeah,
and you know that he got a gearbox attached to it, and he was able to start it like, you know, you didn't have to spin the propeller to start it. And all that was truly amazing.
It was. It's a car that, again, I guess there's so much going on at different times, and there's a lot of good cars around at that time. And that car was not so much ahead of its time. It was just engineered more than anything else of its time. And I don't think a lot of people really understood it. That was the.
No, I think you're right too, because they'd have probably been a bit overwhelmed by just the sheer look of it.
Yeah, I mean, I judged it and I was overwhelmed by it. Like, it's just, there's no end to it. Yeah. Hey, listen, we've got to wrap this up. So, Jay Benz, I'm going to give you one more question to each of
Go
us.
One more
Okay.
question. Okay. I want to know who some of like all the car people you know aside, who are some of the coolest people you've ever met at Summernats, like that just coming through there could be, you know, through music or anything like that, and then like maybe a little story attached to that.
Go, Chic.
Oh, okay. I think probably the maddest person that I've ever come across is Bubbles.
Yeah, exactly.
And the year that he dressed up in the $5 worth of bloody gold and he was Captain Summernats. You know, I thought I was going to die. I was laughing so much. Man, I was choking. Oh,
Yeah.
man. And I mean, you know what's cool about him is that for years, he brought a new car to every event.
Every event. Yep.
Years.
Yep.
And I mean, that in itself was a cool thing. And like, he was so enthusiastic about the whole thing. He'd ring me up and go crook about stuff and tell me stuff I didn't know about and everything like that. And he still is. You know, I see a bit on Facebook and he still carries on
Yeah.
about stuff. But I mean, that was the depth of passion
Yeah.
that the guy had. And you wouldn't give him the time of day. Like he was a short guy with the big fat guts, but he was masses of passion.
Don't talk about Webby like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Funny guy.
Yeah.
Way up on the top end of it all, I suppose. Oh God, it's really hard.
It is, because there's so many people, and like I would say all the people in the judging team, especially like John, Taberna and Laurie, who are both left us now, but they just left such an impression on me. But one person in particular that for me was Troy Trapani, and I'd met him before some, but why he was particularly stands out to me, it brought the American culture. We brought the American culture to the Australian, and they just gelled so well. And I know there's just countless Australians that have gone to his shop and he welcomes them and he just loves Australians. And so it was really good to be able to make that connection. I think we've made that really strong. So he's probably a real standout for me. Yeah, and a great friend now.
Of course. Absolutely. He's a ripper guy. I suppose that an unusual character that sort of stands out, because I mean, over the years I've met a lot of really cool people, and there's no doubt about it.
Absolutely.
You know, the conversations and stuff like that with, you know, and some of the sponsors and stuff like that. But probably an unusual person, you know, from his skill and his depth of enthusiasm and his focus, probably Paul Bennett.
Yeah, absolutely. Paul's awesome.
He's not a guy that you'd warm to straight up, you know. But God,
well, he doesn't suffer fools, and that's why he can put people off. But I'm with you. He's built some of the greatest cars, and he's got such a great mind. Yeah. Yeah,
you know, and yeah. I mean, I'd never be able to work out some of the other people that stand out. I mean, one of the biggest characters I had to deal with, you know, really was, I mean, one person I love working with was Lawrence Legend when we were trying to get all the stunts together and stuff like that. I know you loved him. But the guy who did the fireworks on Saturday night, Harold Upton, well, there was this unbelievable love-hate relationship between him and the government. And they really
because he was trying to blow him up.
Yeah, get onto him. He needs to put in his plan so we can approve them. You know? And I used to have to draw. I used to have to draw it all up, all the distances and everything like that. Yeah. So you had to do it, you know, like all these safety parameters and everything like that. But dealing with him, working with him to create that fireworks show every Saturday night was fantastic. Yeah. Because I loved Saturday night. You know, I loved all that. But oh God, every year that I get this phone call. Or an email. Can you get him to bloody send it in? Oh my God, damn. I mean, there were so many characters that I had to work with over the years. You know, some of the people that like security guys that oh man, no hard work. But they would die for me. They would die for me. I swear to God. Those guys, Izzy from Sydney, he was such a lovely man. But can you put in your bloody information, Izzy?
and that is one thing.
Crazier than I am.
And that's one thing, Chic. We through all the interviews that we did, which we're going to talk about and give people, this is a bit of an insight into that, that the loyalty was something that really stood out. The loyalty to you. You had some great people around you, and obviously you were very good to them. And the loyalty was something really special. So
yeah, mate, and that's what I felt too. And I never, I never took any. I never wanted anybody to think I took it for granted.
No, nobody did.
Grateful that I had so many people that loved the event just as much as I did. Yeah, and that was the cool thing.
Can I ask before we sort of wrap up? One more question is: do you have a favourite Summernats, even for any reason at all, that sits in your mind? You always think about that. Both of you guys.
I do, and it was one, and I'll tell you why. Not because it was the first event, but I had a brand new car there. It was and I got to meet Rick Doverton, who I'd seen his car, and then plus my good mate was Johnny Cannon. He had his Pro Street car, and there was all these Pro Street cars, and we were all just done stuff together, and so that was. I mean, I've loved every event, so it's hard to really, but I just for those reasons it was really good. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I don't really, which seems odd. And the one thing I don't want to talk about are the events where the strongest memory is, because they were the memory of things that were horror stories.
Of course.
And so that's why certain events stood out.
Yeah.
More than anything else. And even though I can, talk about once again the fireworks here. When we let off the bloody the atomic cloud, set up the atomic explosion, and I said, "How come you broke it into three?" He said, "I got scared."
Yeah, it would have blown the grandstand up.
He set it up as one, it would have blown the grandstand over. There were countless bits and pieces.
Yeah, too many.
Was there ever a band? Was there ever, like the music side of things, Chic? Was there ever a band you always wanted to get, and they were almost close, and then or something happened, and because I know that seemed to be a big part of that whole,
I was always on his case to get Cole Chisel. or Billy Thorpe. Remember, I used to always trying to get Billy Thorpe.
It's funny that you should say that, because I went to school with his promoter.
There you go.
I met him in Sydney just after he came back to live in Australia from the USA.
I remember that.
And we were seriously talking about having him there. But the appearance fee was just outrageous.
Yeah.
And so, but it was very close. And a lot of people don't realise that Billy Thorpe was a very, very good guitarist.
He was an awesome guitarist. Yeah.
I was actually listening to his music today.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, funny.
Yeah. And so that I was pretty close, but the price was still just too high. But I always thought, it was good fun having Sweaty Palms there for years, and Dirty Pierre telling jokes as well. I swear to God, every now and again, Dirty Pierre would tell a joke, and I'd look out at the crowd, and they'd all be going, "Oh!" But I think, "Oh man, I don't know how we get away with some of this stuff." But no,
good.
One of the most interesting bands I had there, and for the life of me, I can't think of what they're called. They were from Brisbane, and they did covers on Deep Purple, Akadaka, Guns N' Roses, and someone else. Anyway, who did Slash used to play with?
Guns N' Roses.
Guns N' Roses. Yeah. Anyway, they're playing, and I had them there, I think 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, I remember them.
Yeah, that's right. And a guy said to me outside, "How the hell did you afford to get Slash here?" And I thought, no worries. They were so good. But another band I had there, I loved having there. They're called the VBs. They were a local band.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we worked out a deal. We'd call the bar where they played the Temple of Horsepower. and they played in there. And we put a songbook together with all their songs, because their lyrics were out of control. Their lyrics are
I remember them. Yeah.
You don't want your mother-in-law to listen to the song. Anyway, I walked into the bar there Saturday afternoon, and here's all the deadheads in there having a beer, but singing out of the songbook. No worries. Geez, I love what I do sometimes.
Yeah.
But the other thing they were good at, they used to cook sausages up at the stage, and people would come while they're playing, come up and get a sausage. Anyway, and that was the sort of crazy shit we were able to do, and I loved it. You know, it was.
Awesome.
That's why it's hard to find any one.
Yeah, of course.
Else. It was just all sorts of stuff that we're able to do, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. All right.
Awesome.
I think we've got to wrap this up, Jay Benz.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on, Chic. Really appreciate your time, mate. And
what about me?
Oh, you'll get to you in a sec, Webby. I'm starting at the top of the pecking order, mate.
Yeah, I'm sorry I didn't ask you about your favourite cars, mate.
It's all right. I'll get over it. Oh, good.
It's been great to have a yarn. Absolutely.
Thanks, Chick. Really good to catch up, mate. Yeah.
No worries. Don't forget, there is going to be a 6-part series with Webby and Chick, and they go into detail about all the Summernats old days and all that kind of stuff. I mean, Webby, that's something to look forward to, right?
Yeah, look, I really enjoyed doing it. This is just a little bit of a preview and to let people know what's coming up. And obviously we'll have that at the end of the show where you can find that. But I absolutely love my time with Chick and overall, and then just the 6-part series we put together as well. It just brought back so many fantastic memories.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as
Awesome.
As a car guy myself over the years, Chick, you did a great job, mate, and congrats on everything. And appreciate you putting on something like that. It's inspired a lot of car people over the years, no doubt.
Yeah, no, it's cool. Yeah, it's a labour of love. There's no doubt about it.
It is.
Really proud of the fact that, you know, I've been able to do that, and it's brought so much enjoyment to so many people in so many ways.
Yeah,
Awesome.
Absolutely. Awesome. All right, we're going to cut to a break and we'll be back to wrap up the show.
Skid ad.
This skid ad is brought to you by Street Machine.
Oh, yeah. Kowski, builder by trade. And let me tell you, they've done some modifications to the front steering of this car. Put a little bit more camber in it to assist with the tipping. Oh, he goes the low line, and that really did upset him. You can see that he wasn't happy with his approach. That would have hurt his constant smoke scores. Definitely dissipated there for a while. He tried something different and grabbed the attention of the judges. It backfired. Trying to go right hand down to the tip-in, which is the reverse tip-in like Jason mentioned, but now he's on it. Hard smoke scores now, looking good. I was worried he got himself caught in a bit of a bind. Looks like he's moved to acreage. He's gone that deep now. Got all the way to the end of the exit chute now, firing back up the reverse direction. Over the 60-second mark, and the tyres are off it. Not a bad skid, just had that little bit of a hiccup at the beginning.
All right, we're back from a skid break. Webby, Chick was awesome. You were awesome. That was great.
Mate, we didn't have long enough. Well, we did have long enough, but there were so many things I wanted to cover there. We done some trips to the States a couple of years in a row. As soon as we finished Summernats, we jumped on a plane. We went to California and we snow skied in heavenly, and then we do a few
Snow ski.
Yeah, it was awesome. Chick in particular loved skiing, so he just loved that. And we did a few days there, and then we used to do a couple of shows, Sacramento Autorama, or just different events that were on in the States, and then we'd look at different cars, meet different people, and look at the way things were done, and bring those things back. I didn't even get to touch on that, plus many other things, but people listening will be able to pick that up in the interview series I've just done with, or Cam Sullings and I have just done with Chick.
Yeah, there's a 6-part series, right? Audio series, that one?
Correct.
Yeah, nice. The big question, though, on everyone's mind is, did you wear those acid wash jeans while you were skiing?
No, mate. I had to wear proper. I was cold over there, so of course not. Nice
mate,
one, David.
You're welcome, mate. It's got to happen now. We're up to the 17th one. I've got to give you some stick, but how good has it been, mate? We're up to the last.
It's been unbelievable. Was a great vision from Andy and the team to put this together, and I've absolutely really, really loved it. And I've said several times over the series that some of the, when you look back, some of the people that we've interviewed, they've actually been the standout people in their own field. So I've really enjoyed meeting those people and then bringing them to all the punters out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And don't forget, like, all the people we've spoken to in all these episodes are still there on the YouTube channel. They're there on the podcast, supplied places and stuff like that. Like these are all, you know, they're going to be there forever. So if you want to relive those podcasts and go back, you know, I certainly will jump back into a few episodes and have a listen, you know.
Yeah, I know. You'll be straight back to the Rod Wishart one. I know.
Hashtag my hero. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, exactly.
And also, you said like a big thanks to Andy and everybody at Summernats, and including, we can't forget Jack too, who's producing the show. So he's done a wonderful job.
Yeah.
Absolutely bringing the show to you guys. So it's not only, you know, two ugly heads here. There's a lot that goes on. We just like to get pushed out the front.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a lot of working.
Yeah, thanks to all the team. They've been a great team.
Massive effort. Absolutely. All right. So we've got to look at some cars from the Ride It Out viewer submissions. We've got Anthony's XD Falcon. That's got an LS turbo. How good is that?
That's right. An LS turbo in a forward.
Yes. And it's number plate's Plan D.
Exactly. So, what to Plan A, B, and C?
Apparently, they all got chucked in the bin and didn't work out. So Plan D for XD. It's a bit of a nice matchup there. Good looking car too.
Yeah, fantastic.
No doubt it's a crazy ride to sit in. It'd be pretty fast, those turbo LS cars.
And I think he's from Castle Performance, so you can.
Anything associated with Dale's crazy. So
we'll be crazy.
They're all
exactly.
good, all really good guys.
Yeah, great guys.
Yep. So if you do have some submissions you want to send us in over the with the hashtag Ride It Out over the break before we come back for season 2, send those through to podcast@summernats.com.au, and somehow we'll fit them in the new series. You know, as we go along. Anything, if you've gone for a cruise or just working on your car in the garage, send us those photos and we'll put them in the podcast.
That'd be good.
Talk about some punters, Owen, the usual weekly thing we do.
Our last lot, I've had a pretty good look through there this afternoon, and so entrant for Red Summernats is number 67, Andrew Malloy, in the Candy Apple 66 Mustang Coupe. Really nice car, and as we say, Red Centre, that's only probably 4 or 5 weeks away, so really looking forward to our first event back into it again. For Motor X, I've got number 101, Peter Robertson. He's been there a few times before, but this time we got his black, I think it's a new version of the black Mad Max Falcon Coupe, and that'll be part of the Mad Max display there with a few of the other vehicles as well. Peter's been a great supporter over the years, so looking forward to seeing his new ride. For Summernats, got our entrant number 71, Alison Haywood. Yeah, fantastic, really nice blue 71 HQ Coupe, and she really made a point that it was her car.
Nice.
Yeah, really nice. Yeah, good on her. And for Rocky, next Easter, got entrant 624, Warren Moshell. People will realise this is one of my favourites, orange 48 Chevy pickup. So I just love the trucks. It's a really cool looking thing. So yeah, looking forward to getting back into those events, and as we've always said, get your entries in now so you make sure.
As you just said, Easter, that's not even that far away, really.
No, that's right.
Like we're at the back end of the year now.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it would have been nice to have that one under our belt, but it just means the new one's building.
Yeah,
what an event that's going to be, 100%.
Absolutely, yeah.
So there's a bit of an announcement that there's some really cool new Summernats merch coming. So make sure you follow all the Summernats socials, because all will be revealed in the coming weeks. You'll be able to get it, and I'm told it could all sell out. So keep an eye on it. And if you want some, don't hesitate. Get on there and buy it. I'm going to get on there and buy it. Webby will probably get some for nothing, but I'll have to get.
Well, like Chic said, he said I should have been on the staff there at Summernats, so this might be my payment. See.
Perfect. And just to touch on that again, so there's a 6-part series coming up with Chic in the next couple of weeks. That's just audio, but you guys going to give us some insight over how it's going to work, Webby?
Yeah, look, Andy got on to me back early in the piece when the whole coronavirus thing, and plus also we wanted to have the history of Summernats. We wanted to actually have it recorded or down somewhere. So we put together just a small crew, and we done many hours, and we've put it into a 6-part series of about 30 minutes, 35 minutes for each section. And it just goes right back from the beginning right through the Summernats. So it's a bit of a history, or it's a history of Chic and the Summernats. So it's there, it'll be there, archived forever. So I think we're really, really fortunate. And what it made me realise when we're putting it together, that how, I guess we touched on a bit tonight, but in a bigger way in the series, it's just been such a big part of so many people's lives. And and Chic and myself have been so proud to be able to lay that platform for so many people. So yeah, really good. And I really make a point at the end that it sounds like we're talking about the end, but it's actually, I call it the Chic came along at the crossroads at that time, and then Andy and his team came along at the next crossroads, and then we've gone down another
and
path.
It's building.
Again. So Chic's laid the platform, and Andy and his team have just taken it to another level. And so
it gets better and better every year. You know, like
it does.
Yeah, things like Skid Row. What that's changed the whole side of that Summernats. You know, side of the event there. You know, and lots of things coming. And you know, I no doubt that people at home this year will be ready to go for Summernats 34 in 2021. So make sure you get your entries and your tickets in. Was my next point, because the event will sell out and the entries will fill up. It's already, I think it's up above 1,500 entrants now. Is that right, Owen?
Yeah, that's correct.
So that's only a few hundred left. You know, hits 2,000, it's shut the doors. So make sure if you want to come, get your tickets in, get your entries in, and you know you can also get your spectator tickets now if you want to do that. Yeah. All right, that's it for season 1 of the Ride It Out podcast. This is sad goodbye, but it's not for long.
No. Look, and I'd just like to thank all the team, as we mentioned there, Andy and his crew, and then Jack, but also all the punters that have tuned in and listened to us and made some great comments, and just enjoyed all the guests we've had on, and of course working with you has been great, J Ben. So awesome.
Thanks, mate, and to you too, mate.
See you soon.
Big shout out to all the people that comment all the comments every week and that tune into all the Sunday watch parties and the podcast.
Yep.
You know, and stuff like that. You know, just trying to make cool content to keep everybody excited about their car. You know, if we've made you go into the garage once, then this has worked as a, you know.
100%.
Awesome. All right. I'd say we'd see you next Tuesday, but we won't. But you can absolutely wait for the cool stuff coming up, and we'll be back not too long. All right. That's it.
Cheers.
We'll catch you. See ya.
Summernats!